It's time to learn about early hominids, mother trucker. I'm trying not to swear in the first 2 minutes of the video for algorithmic reasons. So we are going to be using swear word replacements. It's a very smart thing to do when one wants to swear, but instead they have to not swear. So I'm going to start the video over again. No, I'm not going to do it. You're just going to have to sit with what I just did. Chronology. 8 to 6 million years ago, we got bipedal hominids in Africa. I would guess that means, by the way, this is a really cool book. It's a completely free world history textbook that's been made available online, and I might even link it in the description, but I don't really care enough about any of this to do that, so go find it yourself. 8 to 6 million years ago, we got bipedal hominids in Africa, so that means they walk on 2 feet. That's pretty much all that means. Excuse me. So do I really need to say any more? That's 8 to 6 million years ago, which is kind of interesting. I wouldn't have guessed it would be that long ago. I'm of the understanding that Homo sapiens have only been around for 43,000, 45,000 years, something like that. So I thought it was more than that. I think it's like 200,000 years that Homo sapiens, us, has been around. I could be wrong. I understand that was gross. I also don't care. So 2.4 million years ago, Homo habilis begins to use tools. I wonder if Homo habilis comes before or after Homo erectus. Hard to say, specifically because I don't really know what I'm talking about. Have we passed 2 minutes? Yes, we have. Bitch, cunt, fuck, shit, piss, ass, dick, penis, cock. Should I leave that in the video? Yes. I should leave that in. Oh, God. There's going to be kids watching. I don't care. You need to learn what these words mean that you don't need to learn. These videos are not for children. So 43,000, if you came to just learn about the world and history, this is the wrong place. Just go to the textbook. Read the textbook like a fucking adult, you stupid fuck. 43,000 BCE, Homo sapiens expand out of Africa. That's pretty cool. Fuck, I need to plug in my computer. Abby won't let me show you, but I am allowed to describe it. Stop. She is... Stop. Never mind. So, what do we got? Where the fuck were we? I'm sorry. A lot of you probably clicked off of the video, but I don't care. I do care, but not enough to like go back and edit and change things. So, 50,000 to 10,000 BCE, Homo sapiens complete their migration to all continents. Can't be, I'm sure that excludes Antarctica. I mean, give me a fucking break. There's no way that Antarctica was any part of this. And 43,000 BCE, Homo sapiens expand out of Africa, so it only takes them, I was going to say 7,000 years until 50,000 BCE, but that's actually before 43,000 BCE. So it takes them about 40,000 years to complete their migration to all continents. So that's a reasonable amount of time. So 22,000 to 14,000 BCE, last glacial maximum. I don't know what that means. I'm guessing it means like the glaciers were at their largest because it was coldest. Maybe that has something to do with an ice age. 18 to 13, I'm just going to say that humans begin, even though it means 1,000, humans begin to make pottery in 18 to 13. That seems so recent to me. You're telling me they weren't making pottery in 43,000 BC? Am I wrong to call bullshit on that? Like, I'm sure that's a reasonable, like, I'm sure they made that estimate based on reasonable evidence. Like, I have this feeling that maybe there's evidence we haven't seen that would suggest 43,000 BCE or some kind of date like that when we started making pottery. Why didn't we know how to make pottery back then? I'm sure we needed it to cook shit. Like, if you want to cook lentils or like any kind of beans, any legumes, you need a pot. The pots are so useful. I mean, like, I know that clay work might not have begun until 18 to 13, but like, I've heard hypotheses about maybe they hollowed out rocks. Who knows? I don't know. Can't tell you. 11,000 BC is the Younger Dryas event. I'm pretty sure that's some kind of like catastrophic apocalyptic event that happened. I don't know though. I only know because of watching Graham Hancock TikToks. So that's all we got there. 9,000 BCE, Jericho reaches its height. Don't know what the fuck that means either. 7,000 BCE, Çatalhöyük reaches several thousand inhabitants. What is that place? I do not know. We might find out. I'm sure we will in the rest of the textbook. 2000 BCE, I'm pretty sure I need to say Inuits. Paleo-Inuits appear in the Arctic. We're going to go with Inuits. No discrimination on this YouTube channel. You don't think it's funny enough. It really wasn't funny. So, introduction. Let's begin. And yeah, in 1952, at the age of 77 and suffering with an abdominal hernia long overdue for surgery, Sellards returned to Vero to collect charcoal or bones suitable for the newly invented technique of radiocarbon dating. His longtime field assistant Glenn Evans accompanied him, having left Texas with careful instructions from Sellards' physician about what to do if the hernia suddenly bulged. It did, and Sellards collapsed unconscious at the excavation, but the moment Sellards regained consciousness, he insisted on continuing to excavate. Fucking dog. Absolute dog. The above case of Florida State geologist Elias Sellards demonstrates that the study of human antiquity or man's earliest origins is one surrounded by passion, controversy, and a deep well of curiosity. Blah, 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 blah. Not until... I'm just going to read the last sentence of the paragraph. I don't know if I need to read the whole thing. Not until recently, however, have scientific advances, local knowledge, and anthropological theory merged with the curiosity of Western explorers to craft a more accurate version of human origins and evolution. So should we read the rest? Let's read the rest. Fuck it. Our curiosity about our early origins has not only given birth to fictional characters, blah, 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 but also is largely responsible for the growth of archaeology in the 20th century, early 20th century. Western scholars and explorers were not content with simply reaching remote places. They were curious about their earliest human inhabitants. While the motives of early excavators might have been quite simple, well-known paleoanthropologist Richard Leakey got his start collecting stones as a child, which is pretty fucking sick. You're just like walking around looking at stones, and then you end up being a paleoanthropologist. Archaeologists and paleoanthropologists eventually created an entirely new field of historical investigation, prehistory. Multiple pioneers have hacked through underbrush or spent months excavating Paleolithic sites. Not until recently, however, blah, blah, blah. We already read that. Written texts are the primary sources most historians are trained to work with and are those they are most comfortable using. I'm going to guess what the rest of this paragraph says. When you go back before history, what history is the study of the human past through writing. So when you go back in the past, before that, there is no writing, so you have to look at artifacts. You have to look at things that they used, clothes that they wore, shit like that, statues, buildings. However, so let's keep reading. However, if we are to understand humanity's origins, we have to recognize that written language is a relatively recent invention, therefore much of it around 5,000 years old. That's insane to me. I think I got a comment on one of my Instagram reels that there may have been discoveries of Germanic languages existing for over 10,000 years, though I could be wrong. But if that ends up being true, I think it's a recent finding that could change a lot about what we know of the past. That would be really cool. Really cool. I'm waiting to hear back about a lot of that, about that shit right there. Therefore, much of what we know about human beginnings must be borrowed from the findings of colleagues in other disciplines like geology, botany, and archaeology. I made a video about geology the other day. Like, I was studying geology as on top of this. Geology is like the math of the social sciences, or like of history. History? What the fuck am I saying? Of history. It's like the math of archaeology and history and fields like that, because you got to know geology before you start digging up fossils. You got to know geology before you start digging up anything and trying to date it, trying to figure it out. Any artifacts that we find underneath the ground, geology is required to know about that shit and to really understand it. So that's one of the reasons I think geology is incredibly interesting. I feel like I'm on cocaine right now. Botany and archaeology. In all of the regions mentioned below, archaeologists, it's because I popped a Zin and I'm wired in, sorry. In all of the regions mentioned below, archaeologists have excavated and analyzed physical evidence relating to our prehistoric ancestors. Up until recent times, though, it was difficult to understand migration patterns and chronology without a method to determine the age of anything from a human skull to a cutting tool. Archaeologists in the 1930s and 40s used imprecise terms like stone bowl cultures, a nomenclature that referred more to the details of the articles unearthed than their historical context. Okay, that makes sense, because some cultures had stone bowls, they had stone tools, something like that. Other cultures didn't, but how do you determine how old each of them are? This began to change with the advent of radiocarbon dating, or C14 dating, in the 1940s. I made a video about that too. It's called like learning what carbon dating is. It happens to be incredibly interesting. It involves some aspects of chemistry that I also learned in another video when I was learning about biology. I'm just plugging my YouTube channel right now. It's amazing. In the 1940s. Through this method, we were able to place thousands of organic archaeological materials in their proper historical context without textual evidence. Yeah, that's really cool. For artifacts over 40,000 years old, the amount of radioactive carbon we can recover doesn't permit accurate measurement. However, we do have a number of techniques to trace human origins even further back, including aerial photography, side-scanning radar, and potassium argon dating. I don't know what the fuck aerial photography means, and I do not know what side-scanning radar means. I would love to learn more about that, but I'm sure that I would have to be reading an archaeology textbook to understand that. So that's a topic for another video when I learn more about archaeology. Subscribe. You like that? Like that? No, it was not the end of the video. I just wanted to make them feel uncomfortable. All these techniques get around the lack of radioactive carbon in that they don't date the organic material, but instead the terrain in which they were found, allowing us to trace human origins back millions of years to the beginnings of bipedalism. I would guess that I've said this before, the only bottleneck there, the only thing getting in the way would be the idea of people burying shit. So like if you bury shit in a level of the earth that it wasn't just laid down there, then that could fuck up the dating, because you need to know how far beneath the Earth's surface something is in order to date it in that fashion. But there's probably ways around that. Okay. The goal of this chapter, though, is not to trace human evolution from its beginnings, but to set the scene for the beginnings of civilization. Okay, yes. In this chapter, we will explore why hominids moved, how they survived, and how they came to develop agriculture. We also hope to lay out why humans in far-flung parts of the world responded similarly to changing conditions around them, and hence developed civilizations at roughly the same time. This chapter begins at the origins of bipedalism some 8 million years ago and brings us to 8,000 years ago with the Neolithic era, or New Stone Age. Bipedal hominids would develop during the Pliocene era, and our closest ancestors during the more recent Pleistocene. Finally, modern Homo sapiens would appear during the Holocene. During the Holocene, humans would perfect tool usage during the Paleolithic era and would usher in agriculture during the Neolithic. Our chapter ends as humans prepare to enter the Bronze and Iron Ages. So I don't really know much about the Pliocene, the Pleistocene, the Holocene. I'm guessing that they will explain. I'm hoping that they will. 1-3, questions to guide your reading. Should we read these? Let's go ahead. What were some factors that led to hominid bipedalism? Any guesses? Any guesses? Maybe, I'm going to guess maybe relying less and less on trees, perhaps, climbing trees less and less, living in them less and less, as monkeys used to do. Maybe there was a shortage of trees. Maybe a catastrophe took place that wiped out a bunch of trees or made them uninhabitable, something like that. That would be maybe my guess, one of them, one of the factors. How did climate affect hominid development? That would make sense. The climate, there might have been an ice age that challenged evolution. How and why did Homo sapiens expand out of Africa? I don't know, maybe overpopulation, maybe it was too dry in the sub-Saharan regions, it wasn't fertile enough, there wasn't enough plant life to eat, shit like that. How and when did Homo sapiens populate the Americas? I'm guessing that they populated the Americas through the Bering Strait, which is not, it wasn't the Bering Strait back then, it was the Bering Land Bridge. What was a hunter-gatherer existence like? I kind of know that already, just from prior knowledge. Why did Homo sapiens start to prefer agriculture? My guess for that is overpopulation. I'm pretty sure that it's like, eventually when you're a hunter-gatherer, you reach a certain population, you just don't, there isn't enough food around. So you got to start planting it yourself. And so that you can almost artificially increase your food supply. How did agriculture start to change human relationships? This makes a lot of sense. I guess if there's a surplus of food, then not everyone has to grow it. So some people can start making shoes, and then that person's job is a shoemaker or some shit, and then they trade the shoes for food, shit like that maybe. But then also maybe it integrated genders, integrated the sexes. Like if you're working on the farm, the men are working on the farm and the women are working on the farm. Everyone's working on the farm. The children are working on the farm. Maybe that has something to do with it. Key terms. I don't really know what any of these, except Holocene, because we just read it. Homo erectus, I know that. Homo habilis, kind of. Homo sapiens, definitely. Ice Age, definitely. Jericho, I don't know. Natufians, if that's pronounced right, don't know that. Neanderthals, know about those. Neolithic, know about that. Aldoan industry, don't know that. Paleolithic, I know that. Pleistocene, we just read that. I don't know what it is, really. 1-5, human beginnings in Africa. The fossil record in Africa clearly establishes that a human lineage diverged there from African apes sometime between 8 and 6 million years ago. Beginning as far back as 8 million years ago, various species of hominids, the ancestors of modern humans, or Homo sapiens, began to walk upright. This bipedalism would allow these hominids to use their hands to develop, craft, and use tools. Oh, so maybe that's one of the reasons why we became bipedal. Walking on 2 feet so that we could use our hands more. That would be interesting. Bipedalism would also eventually contribute to a move out of the forests into the savanna and turn hominids into big game hunters and gatherers. Okay, that makes sense because you can move around faster, you can move around quicker perhaps. You can hunt more. You can use your hands to use weapons. Paleoanthropologists once theorized that hominids became bipedal to adapt to life in the grasslands. However, the fact that fossils of bipedal hominids were found alongside fossil remains of wood, seeds, and other forest dwellers has cast some doubt on that theory. In fact, bipedal hominids may have lived in the forest for some time. While some bipedal hominids may have stayed in the forest, climate changes did drive others to move into new areas within Africa and beyond it. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. I'm just trying to wrap my head around that. So climate changes were a factor, but maybe not the only factor. 151. Climate, hominin, and evolution and migrations. As far as 30 million years ago, hominids were reacting to changes in their environment. Hominids refers to all great apes, including humans and their ancestors. Hominins is often used when speaking more specifically about modern humans and their more recently extinct ancestors. We will use hominids here because it covers all of the groups we will reference, including modern humans. The Earth cooled, producing more fragmented environments. Okay, as already mentioned, some hominids may have stayed in the trees, but those that left the forest began to thrive in grasslands. These savannas and prairies expanded during the Miocene, and the geologic era lasting from 24 to 2 million years ago. Okay. This grassland expansion prompted baboons and hominids to move out of the forest. So hominids refers to all great apes. Okay. So would a baboon be a great ape? I would guess so. But it says baboons and hominids. So wouldn't baboons count as hominids? I don't know. Map 1-1, map of Africa showing the early hominid fossil sites in Tong, Johannesburg, Ledai Geraru Hadar. I'm not going to read the rest of these because I'm butchering it, I'm sure. The Cradle of Humankind, which includes Malapa, Rising Star, and Sterkfontein. Don't know any of that stuff. Early hominid fossil sites, author, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so Cradle of Humankind is right down here. That's a fossil site. So we got a lot of fossil sites in South Africa. Got some fossil sites in whatever this country is. I'm not going to guess. Oh, it'll tell us. Olduvai Jorge? No, it doesn't tell us. And then we got the Turkana Basin and a couple up here. So that's pretty widespread, north and south. So that's interesting. During the Pliocene epoch, 5 to 1.6 million years ago, another series of environmental changes made these grasslands even more prevalent, leading to a transformation that geologists call the turnover pulse hypothesis. Let's see what that is. Animals with adaptations such as angled knee joints and arched feet survived on the grasslands, while those with longer arms or curved fingers were better suited to the woodlands did not. Okay, got it. Makes sense. I don't know why angled knee joints would help. For hominids, this favorable grassland environment meant the development of several closely related species. Large-toothed hominids known as robust Australopithecines, I'm guessing that's how you pronounce that, appeared in southern and eastern Africa. Towards the end of the Pliocene, around 2.4 million years ago, the first members of our genus Homo habilis, appeared, the first hominid to make stone tools. Okay. Interesting. I'm having a little trouble wrapping my head around the turnover pulse hypothesis and what it actually means. I don't know why it's called turnover pulse hypothesis. This is probably more of a question for an anthropology book, and paleoanthropology specifically, but animals with adaptations such as angled knee joints and arched feet survived on the grasslands. That kind of makes sense to me. Arched feet makes sense because you can probably run better. I guess angled knee joints makes it easier to run too. I guess that does make sense. Longer arms or curved fingers did not survive as well in the grasslands. Okay. Longer arms and or curved fingers. I can understand why that would make it a little harder to run around and also to use tools, perhaps. Okay. The Pleistocene epoch saw at least, and that's 1.6 million to 10,000 years ago, saw at least 25 periods of glaciation and warming. Wow. Glaciation resulted from dips in global temperature, which had two major effects on hominid development. I wonder why those glaciation periods happened. I guess that's more of a geology question. But it resulted in dips in global temperature, which had two major effects on hominid development. First, with sea levels dropping due to glaciation, hominids migrated to Australia and the Americas for the first time. Okay, so that sea levels dropping gave way for bridges to these lands. That makes sense. Second, while many migrated out of colder climates, those that remained developed physical adaptations. Homo neanderthalensis, Neanderthals, a hominid that disappeared 28,000 years ago, became stockier and more powerful to deal with the difficulties of this icy climate. Interesting. They became stockier, kind of like, I don't know, more blubber to keep you warm maybe, and more powerful just in general. That's a good thing to have. Power. I don't know what they mean by that. I'm guessing stronger. While not as dramatic, maybe smarter. While not as dramatic as previous developments, excuse me, the current Holocene period, beginning 11,700 years ago, has seen its share of significant climatic events. The Younger Dryas event was a drop in global temperatures accompanied by a corresponding change in vegetation distribution. Reduced rainfall from 2200 to 1900 BC made conditions very difficult for civilizations in the eastern Mediterranean. Correct me if I'm wrong, but 2200 to 1900, that's the Neolithic era. That's Mesopotamia. Interesting. I wonder if that is one of the reasons why Mesopotamia isn't necessarily a huge metropolis anymore. I know it wasn't a metropolis technically back then, given the definition of metropolis, but you know what I mean. I wonder why it's not as much of an important civilization as it used to be, and not really a civilization at all. You don't hear anyone say, "Oh, I'm visiting Mesopotamia this summer." Okay. Finally, the medieval warm period represents one of the most recent periods of climate change. Like Neanderthalensis, Homo sapiens, Homo erectus, Homo habilis, and other hominids all reacted to changing climate conditions. Homo erectus and Homo habilis migrated, hunted, and used fire, while Neanderthalensis had some use of language and tools and buried their dead. For millions of years, in fact, hominids had been using slivers of a volcanic stone and cutters, probably to hack through animal skin. Millions of years. Interesting. The cutters were often found close together, suggesting that early hominids even had a division of labor between hunters who would have to pursue their prey, and butchers who could wait nearby at the butchering site. Okay, so they had different jobs. Division of labor. That's what division of labor would mean, and I'm a fucking idiot. There is even evidence of task division by gender among Neanderthalensis. I enunciated that wrong. Multiple sites in Europe show different patterns of wear on male and female teeth, indicating a gendered task division in tasks where teeth were used to hold, break, or strip objects. Funny. However, by 25,000 years ago, all other hominins were extinct. Only Homo sapiens our species. Only Homo sapiens sapiens, our species, survived. I don't know what the difference is between Homo sapiens and Homo sapiens sapiens. No fucking clue. Paleoanthropologists attribute, I may have used to know, paleoanthropologists attribute this survival to larger brains, durability, and the ability to adapt to changing environmental conditions. Based on migration patterns and archaeological evidence, Homo sapiens sapiens appear to have been the only hominids to build seaworthy boats, create art, have organized religion, and live in any climate. Interesting. So Neanderthals did not have boats. They didn't make art. They did not have religion. at least not organized religion, and they could not live in any climate, or they could not live in every climate. Interesting. I wonder what differences in the brain, I'm guessing, would have made that the case. That's really interesting. I wonder what parts of the brain Homo sapiens had that Neanderthals did not. Wow. Okay, I think we'll stop for now. We've had fun. We're going to come back to this. I'm going to make a playlist so that we can subscribe to that, follow that, whatever the fuck. I'm pretty sure you can do that. And you can see maybe when new videos drop. I'm pretty sure that's a thing. And my name is Luke. This is Castles in the Air. We're going to continue this another time. This was fun. Goodbye.